13 and 15 years of age is a critical period for students. This is a time where they transition from primary to secondary schools, but it's also the time when they get initiated into drug and substance use. According to a report by NACADA, our secondary schools are not drug-free environments, and we even have bars and other dens located near schools. Is this just the tip of this iceberg of drug use and abuse? This is our conversation on Health Digest, your authoritative health show. And we have an audience made of young people from various parts of this country. Just to drive this conversation on drug use and abuse, we'll have our panelists, various specialists on this particular issue. And to start off this discussion is a short story by Caroline B. about Shem and his use of drugs and how he managed to overcome that particular downward spiral. I'm Dr. Masi Korir.
Shem had never imagined about the devastating effects drug use could have on him until he found himself having to deal with it. He was first introduced to drugs in 2011 when he joined campus fresh from high school.
I was told ladies love parties and alcohol. So if you just organize for a party, have alcohol in your party, and also you also test some, you will attract ladies.
He was young and ambitious, and he quickly made friends with his roommates. While he was a staunch Christian, his roommates had a different lifestyle. They would party all week long, convincing him that he was missing out.
Sometimes you might not really have the money or the pocket to sustain alcohol. So you need just to test bang because it's pocket friendly, a 30 bob or 50 bob you can get. With time also, I was told you need to start using Mira now. If you combine cigarette, especially sportsman, with all this, you will be perfect.
When addiction set in, his life began a downward spiral.
I started now selling my equipment or selling my personal stuff bit by bit until I remained with nothing. Sometimes I could go to school during exams days only, or maybe I don't go at all.
In 2014, it got from bad to worse and had to drop out of university after his brother stopped paying his fees due to poor grades. With a difficult life now, he attempted to commit suicide thrice.
I bought medicine. I wanted to overdose myself. I wanted to take a motorbike just to go to the main road, Mombasa Road, wait for a truck, it knocks me down. The third instant now was I bought a rope. I wanted to tie it on top of my shower, but a friend of mine came when I was just in the process.
He had even signed up to join Illuminati, a guarded organization said to control the modern world.
So I went to the website, searched for their contacts. So I was communicating to them and they were responding. They asked me, are you sure and are you ready and are you serious about this? Because we'll need you to give us someone. So I remembered they would have come to my mother, for my mother. I stopped it at that.
When all hope was lost, like a prodigal son, he decided to go home and seek help. According to Jane Ngatia, a counseling psychologist, a change of environment is crucial for recovery.
They need to go to a brand new place. If they can change a college, it helps because it resets the mind of that person.
She also advises that recovering addicts should have supportive people around them.
I am speaking to the parents who probably are following this. Speak to your children. Try to follow them. Try to make friends with them and find out exactly what they do.
In 2016, Shem resumed school after recovering. He started afresh, changing his course from business administration to communication. He is set to graduate this June with good grades and is determined to help other addicts. Caroline B., KTN News.
We've seen the effects of drug use and substance use, substance abuse. We've seen the effects of alcohol abuse, and alcohol being one of the socially acceptable drugs. And this is not just among adults, but among our youth population, which is where this particular conversation will be centered on. And with me on stage for this conversation is Tina Masai. Tina Masai is a clinical psychologist, and she works with people who inject drugs. We have Patricia Kwamboka, who's a project manager at Dagoretti Child Protection and Development Center. And then last but not least, we have Susan Maua, who's the Acting Manager, Public Education and Advocacy at NACADA. And also among us in the audience is Rita Gatonye, and she'll be telling us her story also on use of drugs and her journey to recovery. And before we get to Rita, I'd like just to hear, and especially from Susan, NACADA's report says that our secondary schools are not drug-free environments. As a regular Kenyan, I'm worried.
Indeed, you should be worried, because it's not just our secondary schools that are not drug-free, because after the secondary school survey, we actually did a primary school survey that is also showing that initiation of drugs actually begins at primary school. So we are talking about age 10 and 11 as the age of initiation now. So as an ordinary Kenyan, you really need to be worried, because there is a lot more that needs to be done so that we can protect the next generation. Otherwise, we are not going to have a generation to speak about. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Patricia, why is this the case? I mean, these are very young people in their formative stages of life. How are we having them initiated into drugs in primary school and secondary school?
Children are pretty much on their own from a very young age. I work with children who are on the streets, children who are coming from homes that are broken, and they're trying to cope with the situation that they find themselves in. And poverty is also a big issue. So you find from a very young age, children are accessing drugs, and it's not what we think like cocaine, heroin. You have glue, you have paint thinner, you have things like tobacco, there is another one called kuber. Even the psychotraumatic drugs that you get from Madare that you can buy for a shilling, they can access, and they get the high they need, and they can get away from the thoughts and the troubles that are in their life. So there's a lot that is happening within the family structure that is causing children to look for drugs as a way of escaping.
You deal specifically with people who inject drugs. Are these children in primary schools, secondary schools, accessing the injectable drugs?
Thank you for that. When we look at our clients, the ones who we've taken care of, when you see somebody who has started using drugs by age 20, age 18, some of them have actually started injecting at early ages like 13, 14. Very unique, although outliers who started injecting at ages 9, 10. So yes, it is possible. Also the use of things like cannabis are acting as gateway drugs, because one may use cannabis. Cannabis is laced with heroin, so that sparks the introduction of people into heroin use at a very early age. Yeah.
Okay. I'd like us to go to Rita, and just to give us a brief about her journey. Rita.
I'm a law student. I am a beneficiary of the methadone program at Madare Hospital, and I am convener of an organization called Women's Response to AIDS and Drug Addiction. So let me just give you a short overview of why I'm here. I was a heroin addict for about 7 years. When I left high school, I came from a very strict background. So I went from high school and went to campus. When I got to campus, not everybody, but smoking weed was the in thing, and it had just become the in thing. So we would do it innocently. So after doing this for about 2 years, we were very young, very ambitious, about 20 years old, in our third year of school, just feeling like we're on top of the world. So we had information on drugs. We had the basic information on what drugs do. We smoked weed for about 2 years. After that, the dealer gave us some free sachets of powder because we were such good customers. And Kenyans with free things. So we said, let's try. And we tried. So we tried it. After using it for about a few weeks, on trying it, here we were telling ourselves that we're strong enough. I will quit after 2 weeks. I'm too intelligent. I will quit after 1 month. This thing can't get me. So after about a month, we realized that there seemed like there was no going back. By that time, there wasn't anything like the methadone program. We didn't have enough information on what to do when you're addicted. So from that point, it spiraled into a realization that we were going to be in this state forever, or so we thought. We stopped going to school. I personally stopped going to school. I lived on campus, but I wouldn't be able to make it to class because it now became an issue of, do I spend this money to buy lunch, or do I spend this money to get better? When you get addicted now, it becomes, withdrawals become a real issue. Part of my family found out that I was addicted. They took me to a doctor, took me to a psychiatrist. When I went to the psychiatrist, unfortunately, a toxicology that's examining my urine was not done. So I was diagnosed with bipolar. At that time, we didn't really understand these diseases. So I was told I was bipolar, which I now realize I'm not. But I was told I was bipolar, and I was put on a regimen of antipsychotic drugs. Being on those drugs confused me a bit. Really confused me, actually. So after a few months of doing that, I felt like I was on autopilot. I was down and I needed to come up. The day this was before I tasted heroin. The day I tasted heroin and felt alive again, I'm not saying it's not a good thing. When I use the word alive, it's so that you can understand. The day I used it and felt alive again, then I got used to using it. So I stopped going to school. I would lie here and there. After 2 years of lying about school, I decided not to go altogether. By that point, the addiction had become serious, so I had to move closer to where the drugs are available. So I moved closer to there, and luckily for me, after 3 years of living pretty much a street life where you have to do whatever you need to do to get that money. You have to be a con woman. Some people turn to become sex workers. Some people become thieves, and these are people from all backgrounds. So after 3 years of doing that, the NASCOP, Ministry of Health, were able to bring this drug called methadone, which is a substitution therapy for heroin. What I can say is I was lucky. We didn't have enough information on how to deal with our substance abuse issues. However, the government did come in at the right time to provide something that at least would keep our bodies stable as we try and figure out what the drugs have done to our mind. So in 2014, December, the methadone program started. 2015, I enrolled myself in the methadone program. Of course, I didn't tell anybody. Of course, I did not tell my parents. They found out after a year, where is this? You keep going every day. So I enrolled myself in the methadone program in 2014, went on for 2015, 2016, and 2017. And through that time, there was a lot of counseling. There was a lot of rewiring. Even after I finished the methadone program in 2017, going back to school was very difficult, of course, because of the stigma, but I did go back to school. And even after the methadone program, I had to rewire my brain. I had to completely rewire my patterns because having used drugs for such a long time, I wasn't the same person. I would be angry all the time. I had anger management issues. I couldn't live with people. So, but luckily, I'm happy to be here today because many of the people we began with did not make it. By did not make it, I mean either they overdosed or they died of something else drug-related. So I acknowledge that it really is a big problem that starts from a very, very young age and can go on and become really detrimental if not checked early enough.
I think Rita's story is a story of many other people who use drugs, because I have particularly done stories on people who inject drugs, and it starts from, as she says, sort of an innocent point. Is this the case every day?
When we are young, we just want to try something out. We want to fit in. We want to feel calm. We want to maybe even feel a heightened sense of ourselves. So when we are hanging out with friends, it's very natural to try out the cigarettes because they look cool when you hold them. It's nice to try out the weed because a lot of the songs make them sound nice. So it always starts fairly innocently. It could be seeing mom and dad having a drink every time we have visitors. It starts out just as innocent as anybody's story could be. However, for some people that ends up being a path of addiction, although for some it can stop beyond the experimentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patricia, she talked about stigma, that going back to school was difficult because of stigmatization. Is stigmatization stopping us from reaching out and helping people who are dealing with whatever drug that they are addicted to?
Definitely, that is true, because the reaction in society, in school, within families will be like, that person is going to influence my children negatively, so don't interact with them. When people see you, they'll be whispering, that one used to take drugs. In some instances, as she explained, what you have to do to get your high, commercial sex work, you're stealing, all those are things that people brand you a thief, for lack of a better word, prostitute. So you end up really being ostracized and excluded from society to a point that you feel like it's not possible to come back. There's no one who will care about you. So you keep going deeper, and that is how younger children, by the end, by the time they're reaching 20 now, they are on the downward spiral completely.
Okay. Susan, is information really out there to the young people in primary schools and secondary schools on using drugs, so that we avoid, as she says, innocent introduction, and then they're stigmatized, and then they end up being outcasts, yet it's probably something that we can give information from early on?
Information is out there. But one thing that we need to realize is the drug field is very dynamic, in the sense that she has given about what she started with, and Patricia here has mentioned that there's the inhalants that you'll find, and even drugs which are actually meant for mental health is actually, people have access there. So you find that, yes, there's a lot of information that we have put out, and that is why public education and advocacy is one of the largest units in NACADA. Because our job, therefore, is to provide education, provide that information. But you find that is not enough, because from our own studies and the new things that are happening today, we find that it's not just the young people that need to be reached, but now it's the parents that need to be reached. Because from the secondary school survey that you talked about, the young people actually mentioned that the home environment, other than schools not being a safe environment, the home environment, a number of them actually begin drug use from the home environment, because either the parents are using or there is a relative who is using, and then their peers. So that means that then we need to reach out to a totally different group other than the youth. Because most of the time people think, and I get a lot of requests, please come to this school, come and talk to them about drugs. But in actual sense, and we also change tact, because now the people we are reaching are the teachers, because they have the children on a regular basis. So it means that they should be able to incorporate this in their work. And then the parents, we need to reach them, because they are actually the first unit of socialization. So if they don't do that, then somebody else will not be able to give. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's hear from the young people.
Can you tell me, like, is there any disadvantage in taking beer? Like any bad and full, you'd say, I took beer and it cost, I'm now sick, it has tampered with my body in a certain way. Is there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A second question?
The second question is there any disadvantage about weed, Like, have you taken weed and said, okay, it has made me crazy in this way? Or someone who took weed, got mad and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And yet there are cigarettes out there, Cigarettes cause cancer and all that stuff, but they're being sold for free. They are everywhere, Yeah, but some things, we have not engaged the youth or the young people in positive talks. Okay, I was born in the slums. Okay. My mom used to sell changa. Do you know changa? Yeah, so my mom told me, okay, you can taste changa, See, it's very bitter. It doesn't have any benefits to the body. That's how me never used to take changa, because at first it was, it's very bitter, it has no benefits to the body. Then there was a time she graduated to selling now muratina. Muratina, on the other hand, people sell it, it's very sweet, it's mixed with honey and all that stuff. So at times when I'm going to school as a slum kid, okay, I don't call it slum because that's offensive. As a ghetto kid, I'm going to the school and I don't have anything. We don't have tea, you know, we just cooked the ugali that remained. What do I take the ugali with? My mom would give me the moratina. He tells me this benefit, you know, this is beneficial to the body. So like, right now I'm not a drunkard, but my mom introduced me to all those things when I was young. And that didn't make me a drunkard, you know, because I was very open with her that, you know, you can take this has benefits to your body and all that stuff.
Now, when we talk about addiction, because my colleagues here are now dealing with the other end of things, you know, it's a continuum. We start from those who are not using to the ones who have used and probably have managed to return back. So there's something about drug use that you need to understand, and one has to do with the genetics. There is something about your genetic composition. There are those who are predisposed to, if they ever try to use, then it means that they are likely to get themselves into addiction. And we are talking about 40 to 60% chance, genetics. So if you look at your background, are you able to trace people with substance use problems, alcoholics and so on? That should be a sign to you that you have a high chance of becoming an alcoholic or an addict or whatever it is that they are. Now the other 60 to 40% is the environment. What is it in your environment that is contributing to this? It is good that you've mentioned that your mother said, Changa is not good for you. And so it means that your mother helped to change your perception of harm for Changa. And when she said, Muratina is sweet, then what did it do? Your perception of harm also changes. Now that is our biggest challenge, because when you tell young people, what is the level of control? Because a young person, a young growing mind, and you know the brain, the last part of your brain to grow is the one that actually is responsible for executive functions, decision making and so on. So if the person has a perception that bangi is not harmful, it means that it's likely to increase their chances of beginning. But remember, at that point, they cannot tell. They actually cannot tell that they are going to have a problem. And my colleagues here will tell you that it is a big challenge because you don't know. It's like you begin to cross the road, but you have closed your eyes and you do not know how dangerous it is, and probably you'll manage to cross. Maybe another person will be knocked down. So there are all those things that happen, but a lot of it has to do with the perception of harm. Yes.
All right.
For the young person.
And just to add to that addiction is actually a disease. It's a disease, it's defined as a disease, and it affects the mind. So I think that's why Susan comes in, and that's why we have Patricia and Tina here. I want us to take a short commercial break, and when we come back, we'll engage our audience and hear what they have to say about this topic, their questions and comments on this particular discussion on drug use and abuse among the adolescents and youth. We'll take a short break, and I'll leave you with this myth or fact for the week.
Heroin was thought to be non-addictive when it was first created. Fact: heroin was originally developed in the 1870s to combat the addictive properties of morphine. Its highly addictive nature and the withdrawal symptoms are rather difficult to deal with. If heroin addicts do not get significant help, they may not be able to quit. Methadone is one of the medically assisted ways of managing heroin addiction.